everyone, it's Frankie-Lou. I'm coming to you today from the kitchen of the Grow Together homestead where winter sowing season is in full swing. The reason I'm saying that is because it's the beginning of April here in southern Alberta. Now, a lot of people ask me when can they start doing particular seeds and putting out hardy versus tender, and they're looking for a specific date. And I have to tell you that can change on an annual basis because this year we have a very long winter going on here in southern Alberta. Still lots of snow on the ground. None of my jugs have started sprouting at all yet. That's unusual. Usually by now I start to see some stuff starting to come up, my more hardy things, because usually the snow is starting to disappear by now. I still have a ton of snow, so I can still put out hardy perennials. That being said, I'm looking at the forecast coming up over the next little while. We're going to have high temperatures during the day. Like, we're going to have a few days here where the temperatures could be in the teens, whereas at night it's still going to be freezing. So this is actually a good time to be putting out your hardy perennials still, putting out your hardy veg and your hardy flowers. And I'm actually starting right now on all my much more tender things. With my very, very tender things and heat lovers like tomatoes and cukes, I'm going to be doing that with my cheat method, which I'm going to show you in a second here. But also, it's pretty much have at her time, okay, when it comes to getting your winter sowing stuff out. If you're brand new to this and you're just hearing about it, you're actually lucky, because right now you could be putting out pretty much anything and get good success, because now is the time to start putting out those tender things. I'm going to be starting to put out my calendula. I'm going to start putting out my nasturtium. I'm going to start doing my sunflowers. I am going to be busy. So I have a few things that I do to help get me through this crazy winter sowing season where I'm basically winter sowing every day. In order to get out everything that I want to get out, I have to be organized. So one of the things that I do is I tend to prepare my jugs the night in advance. What I'll do is, like, for instance, my son and I sat and watched The Mandalorian, and I prepared 15 jugs just to this point so that they'd be ready to go in the morning. Now I know I can take some time, because I this morning am going to plant 9 different kinds of tomatoes. That's going to take me a little bit of time, but now that these jugs are prepared in advance, it won't take as long. The other thing I do is I prepare my soil in advance. This is my favorite soil to use for winter sowing, which is the Pro Mix Organic Herb and Veggie Blend. It takes a lot of moisture to get it to the right consistency, and what we're looking for is pretty darn moist. We want it so that it's squeezing and holding together and holding its shape. That takes a lot of water, so I actually prepare this in the bin. I start adding water the night before, so it's all ready to go, and I've had my morning coffee, so I'll remember to do everything right. I'm going to start planting now. And this is just some of the little things I do. I prepare things in advance as much as possible so that in the morning when it's time to do my winter sowing, I can get it done a lot quicker. So as I said, it's a great time to start. I will probably be winter sowing almost every day because I'm a crazy person and I do tend to put out hundreds of jugs every year. This year I'm quite excited to get started with my tomatoes because I have 9 different varieties that I'm planting today, and you know me, I'm gonna find a few more. And I'm kind of excited though because this year I've been working so hard at seed saving and using heirloom varieties that every single tomato that I'm planting today, these 9 varieties, are tomatoes that I've grown myself and done seed saving with, or I swapped at a seed swap. So that's kind of cool. I really like that, being able to produce my own food year after year. I am really saving money on seeds by doing that. Don't worry, if you are interested in seed saving, there are lots of videos on my channel already about that, and I'll be doing more this year when it is time. That being said, all of these are heirloom varieties. They're stored in these nice little coin envelopes. Over the years, I've found that's the best way to store these seeds. And I also keep them in one of these photo binders. I found that that's a really, really great way to keep my seeds organized, and I'm quite excited to get going today. So, just a quick recap, preparing your jugs. Get your drainage holes punched in the bottom. This is my favorite tool to use, the corkscrew. I've got over 12 holes punched in the bottom here for good drainage. I've cut around at the hinge. I'm now going to take this and fill it full of this beautiful soil. I do like the Pro Mix because it has it's really, really nice and fluffy, so it allows for the germination to take place without the seeds having to struggle too much. It has a nice light organic fertilizer compost mix in it, so that's great for sustaining those plants once they do germinate. These tomatoes that I'm planting today will probably be ready to go into the ground, and I find it usually takes 4 to 6 weeks for them to get to the good size. So I'm going to put in here today, my first one that I'm going to plant is Manitoba. I really love this variety because it's a good short-term variety. The tomatoes aren't huge, but they're also not a cherry tomato. They're a good mid-sized tomato, so I do like this one. They're maybe not as juicy as some of the other tomatoes that I'm going to be growing, but it's a consistent performer and it's a productive performer on the prairies. That's a good thing to have, especially since I do so much preserving. I know I'm going to have a lot to do with these Manitobas. When it comes to planting my tomatoes in my milk jugs, I only put 5 of them in here. Now the reason for that is, like a lot of people I know, I've seen people, they sprinkle a whole pack. Seeds are too precious for me to do that. And then the other thing that I want to keep in mind is I want to ensure that these roots aren't going to be entangled and it's going to be easier to separate them when it's time to put them in the ground in 4 to 6 weeks. So I could do the paper towel method that I showed earlier with this, and I'm going to do that with some of them as part of my experiment, but I do know that I tend to get good germination rates. My past experience has shown me that I will probably have 5 tomatoes ready to go in the ground in 4 to 6 weeks. My ground outside is not going to be ready for tomatoes in 4 to 6 weeks. These are going to go into both a greenhouse and a high tunnel. So if you are planning to put your tomatoes in the ground, you may want to hold off a little bit longer here in the prairies. I find that here in the Calgary area, it's not a good idea to start planting your tomatoes in the ground, especially outside, well into June. I know it's sad, but that's the reality. So I've got my tomatoes planted nicely in here. I'm going to make some tags for them. If I do that now, remember how I said it's nice to plan ahead? If I make my tags now and place them in the jugs now, that's saving me a little bit of work later. But the other reason I like to do this is sometimes those labels, no matter how well I label the outside and the different things that I use, they can get washed off. If I place the tag that says Manitoba on here in the handle facing this way, it's going to prevent seedlings from growing up into the handle, and that can happen. It's happened to me before. And also I can read, oh, Manitoba from the see-through handle here. That's not, I'm also going to label on the inside, on the outside, and I'm going to put the date. I'm going to tape these up with a good quality duct tape. Don't want to cheap out too much because you don't want that falling apart, especially when you're moving them in and out. And that's the next part I'm going to talk about. So for most of this stuff that I'm going to be putting out over the next couple of weeks, like the calendula, and the cornflower, and the phacelia, and parsley, and all that stuff, I can leave that out now, pretty much. I want to put those things out in my yard somewhere where they're going to have exposure to the elements, like not underneath an eave. You want precipitation to be getting in there, but I'm not going to be placing it somewhere full out in the full sun at this point because, as I said, we do have some really warm days coming up. We don't want germination to come along too quickly. This time of year, I start putting my stuff more in areas where it gets morning sun instead of full exposure. But with my super heat lovers, like my tomatoes and the cukes I'm going to start in a couple of weeks, I do an extra step. Now, a lot of people question me on this. I have tried to do true winter sowing with tomatoes and cukes, and they haven't done very well for me here where I am. You might be able to get away with it in zone 4, and good on you if you can. I'm jealous. But where I am, zone 3, I have to do a cheat in order to get the tomatoes. It's still less work than starting them inside, watering them every day, keeping fans going, finding room for them inside. What I do is when it's nice outside, above 0, I place them outside on a very sunny spot. In fact, I place them on a stone surface that retains heat, and then I bring them in at night if it's freezing. If it's freezing outside, I don't put them outside. they will be okay for a couple days in the sunny window if you have a little bit of a cold spell, which we will have here in Alberta. But I don't leave these out permanently. I know some people question that. I have experimented several years with this. This is how I get my best product here in Canadian Prairies, is kind of a cheating winter sowing situation when it comes to tomatoes and cukes, is I only put them out at the nice weather, bring them in at night. That might seem like a lot of work, still less work than starting them under lights inside, because that whole hardening off thing is a lot more work, especially if you're carrying trays. I tend to drop trays. I'm a very clumsy person, whereas I can carry 4 of these in and out. I've got nine varieties I'm planting here. It takes me a minute and a half to get them in and out every day. It's not a big deal. I stick them underneath my kitchen table during the nights, stick them out during the day. I know I'm super excited that I can start getting everything out, but I'm also daunted by the amount of work that it's going to take. Just do a little prep work in advance to make your life a little easier. I do enjoy watching a nice TV show with my son, but I'm putting holes in things with corkscrews while I'm doing it. I still can enjoy my show. It makes my mornings a little bit easier. I hope that was helpful. I hope you'll give it a try. If you haven't tried winter sowing yet, please do keep those questions coming, because I love being able to get people excited about this technique and giving it a try. And as always, I hope you'll take this chance to grow together today. Have a good one.